Hello boys and girls! So today I'm going to be showing you how to make a crazy hat sculpture using paper. Today I'll be demonstrating with bright green pieces of paper, but feel free to use whatever paper you have at home. So maybe that's magazine paper, newspaper, construction paper, maybe it's just notebook paper. Whatever you have available to you is perfect for making a crazy hat. So I'm going to start by making the base of my hat, the thing that goes on my head. So in order to do this, you'll need about 1 to 2 pieces of paper. And what I'm going to do is use glue, tape, or a stapler in order to attach them together. So I'm going to make sure that they're overlapping each other a little bit. I'm going to use a glue stick to demonstrate. I'm going to add glue to one side. Oops. And I'm going to overlap my other piece of paper on top of the glue. And I'm going to hold it and add pressure for about 10 seconds. So we can count together. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. You might need to hold it a little bit longer depending on where you are and what kind of paper you're using, but usually 10 seconds is pretty good. Now, what you're going to do, you're going to take your super long piece of paper and you're going to put it on top of your head. You might need a friend or a parent to help you do this. And you're going to roll it around you and see how much space you need for it to fit on top of your head. So when I put mine on top of my head, it will fit about right here. So then, once I have that, again, I can tape, glue, or staple it together. This time I'm going to use staples. And I'm going to add a few staples into my hat so that it doesn't get too big or too small. This is the size that I need for it to fit on top of my head. So now we have a great base structure in order to add all of our cool sculptural elements to our crazy hat. So stay tuned. So in order to make everything that I'm going to show you today, you want to first start by preparing some different shapes. So I'm going to show you how to create rectangles, circles, squares, and triangles today. So whenever I am about to cut up a piece of paper, before I cut, I either draw the shape that I want first, or I fold in order to get that shape, and then I cut. So I'm going to show you how to fold pieces of paper in order to get the shape that you want. So in order to get a rectangle, which is one that you use for a lot of the techniques that we use today, I'm going to start by folding an edge of my paper down. I like to use thinner rectangles in order to work. So I fold up my paper, and now I can cut on the folded line. The next shape I'm going to show you is how to create a square. So squares are pretty easy. I start by cutting out a rectangle, and in order to make my square even, all I need to do is take one corner of my paper and line it up to the bottom. So then I can cut off this extra piece and it looks like I have a little extra on this side as well. And when I open up, I'll be left with a perfect square. Next, I'm going to show you how to create a triangle. So if I were to create a square again, all I would have to do is actually cut on that folded line instead of opening it up to create my square. So here we have some triangles. Lastly, I'm going to show you how to make a circle. So to make a circle, I have to first make a square. Now I have a perfect square. Now you might know a few other ways to create circles, but this is just one easy way that I've found. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to cut off all 4 corners. This will leave me with some triangles that I could use for something else for my crazy hat later if I want. So I'm cutting off all the corners. So right now, I'm left with a shape that almost looks like a circle, but not quite. So I'm going to keep cutting off the corners. And then if I clean up my edges, I am left with a nice circle. After you've prepared some shapes, now you can start to create some really great sculptural elements that you can later add to your crazy hat. So I'm going to show you those now. The first technique that I'm going to show you is a pleat. And for a pleat, you need to have a long rectangle. And what I'm going to do, I'm going to hold it in front of me. I'm going to fold it towards me first. I'll pick it up so that the tail goes behind. And I'm going to fold away from me. Then I'm going to pick it up again so that its tail is facing me. And I'm going to fold it towards me again. I'm going to keep repeating this process of folding away from me and towards me until I get to the very end of my paper. Then when I pick it up, I have this really cool zigzag that I could add to my crazy hat. Next, I'll show you how to create a curl. For a curl, again, you're going to need a rectangular piece of paper. And this time, you'll also need a pencil. You can also use things like your glue stick or maybe a really thick marker, and your curl will end up looking a little bit different. So I'm going to wrap my paper around my pencil. And I'm going to keep wrapping until I get to the very end. And then if I unravel it a little bit and pull on it, I can make it go in different directions. So here we have a curl that I could add to my crazy hat. Next, I'm going to show you how to create loops and chains from loops. So to create a loop, again, we need a rectangle. And for this demonstration, just to make it a little bit quicker, I'll be using staples, but as always, you can use tape or glue or something else that you have to attach with. So to create a loop, I'm going to take one side and I'm going to place it under the other edge. Now, if I were using glue, I would put glue right here, but since I'm using staples, I just need to make sure that the two parts are together. I'm going to add a staple right in the middle. So here we have a loop. To make a chain, I'm going to put another piece of paper inside of the loop. I'm going to grab the two edges. And again, I'll attach the two edges together. And I can keep repeating this process until I create a super long chain. And I'll do one more. So I put it inside of the loop. I grab the two edges and I glue, tape, or staple them together. And here we have a chain that I could add to my crazy hat. Next, I'll be showing you how to make fringe. Just like before, to create fringe, I need to make sure that I'm using a rectangle. Fringe almost looks like hair. What I'm going to do, I'm going to cut into the side of my paper, but I'm not going to cut it all the way. Notice how I'm leaving some space at the top where it's not cut. And now I have some fringe that I could attach to my hat. Now, there's a few different things that I could do with fringe using the techniques that I already showed you. So I'm going to show you how to create a curled fringe and also a pleated fringe. So I'm going to start with pleated fringe. So remember, to make something pleated, I fold it away from me. I pick it up so that the tail goes away from me, or to me, and then I can fold it towards me. Then, if I hold it folded, oops, I accidentally cut it off. I can cut it, still leaving space at the top, so that my fringe stays together. And now instead of being straight fringe, it will be some fringe that has a little bit of a pleat to it. If you start with a thicker rectangle, you can make a longer pleat. Lastly, I'm going to show you how to make a curled fringe. So to make a curled fringe, again, you need to start with a rectangle. And this time, you'll grab your pencil again. And you'll roll until you have a little bit of space at the top. Because remember, in order to make fringe, we need to leave a little bit of space at the top so that it doesn't fall apart. Now I can unroll it and I'll carefully start cutting, remembering to leave a little bit of space at the top. And I can fix it by just helping it roll back up again. And then I have a curled fringe. Next, we're going to actually start using the circles and triangles that we created in order to make what we call a stand-up. Now, to make a stand-up, I cut in the middle of my shape and I put it onto itself so that I can make almost like a scale-ish type of shape. Again, you can use glue to do this, but for the sake of time, I'm just going to use a staple. I can cut off the extra, and then I could continue to add these stand-up shapes onto my crazy hat. I can also make stand-ups with a circle by doing the same thing. So I'm going to cut down the middle, and I'm going to wrap it onto itself. Again, you'd either glue in here, or you can staple or tape. If you don't like the extra paper, you can always cut it off. And now you have a stand-up that you could glue onto your hat. Now, a handy-dandy thing for creating things to stand up, like let's say I wanted this piece of paper to stand up, but I can't really glue or tape very easily because it's so thin. So what I can do in order to make this a line that could stand up and I could glue onto my hat, I can create tabs. So I'm going to go boop, and I'm going to make sure that I'm changing the direction that I'm folding. So for this one, I'm going to fold it away from me, which means that for this one, I need to fold it towards me. And since this one was folded towards me, I need to fold this one away from me. So now we've created some tabs, and if I were to glue these little tab parts, I could glue it so that it would stand up on my hat. I can even change it slightly by bending it and gluing the tabs that way, and I could create a curved line really easily. Last, I'm going to show you how to create a cylinder. And again, for a cylinder, I need some kind of rectangle. So this one, I'm just going to cut it off a little bit because I like how tall it is. I'm going to do the same thing that I did when I made a loop. So again, I'm going to take the two ends, and you can either glue, tape, or staple. To save time, I'm just going to staple. Now, again, just like the problem that we had before we put the tabs on our piece of paper, we wouldn't be able to tape or glue or staple this very easily to our hat because the circle around it is so thin. If I were gluing or taping this way, it would be easy because there's a lot of space to do that. But if I want to make it so that it stands right out from my hat, I need to add tabs again. So again, I'm going to take my scissors, so now I could glue on these little tabs and add it so that it would stick straight up from my hat. Now that you've seen all the techniques, you probably have some that you really like and want to try out and can start adding on to your crazy hat. Now to start doing this, again, you need to make sure that you either have staples, tape, or glue, and your technique's ready to go. So I do a combination of preparing techniques ahead of time, but also as I'm working, I can make more things. So in order to put things on, I'm going to demonstrate using glue, and you need to make sure that you have a flat area to stick it on with. Again, I need to hold glue for 10 seconds, adding pressure in order to make sure that it will stick. So 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. So I have this chain glued to the side of my hat. I think I'm actually going to add chains going all around my crazy hat and then add other techniques onto the chains. So again, you don't have to use all of the techniques that I showed you today. Maybe you'll just use a couple, but make sure that you're filling up your hat. My glue seems to be having a hard time today, so I'm going to go ahead and staple too. I'm also using a very thick paper to do this because that's all I have. I can also add things on top of things that I already have. So I started with the chain, but I also really like the curl technique. So I'm going to add curls to my chains. I'm going to hold my glue for 10 seconds. Now I have a curl that will sit on top of my head. I can also add other things. I really liked my curled fringe, so maybe I could add some of that around the side. And my goal is to completely fill up all the sides of my crazy hat because it's a sculpture and sculptures are seen from all sides. I think I'm going to add my stand up here and then I'll put another curl on top so that it hides the end of the stand up. So I'll create another curl. This time I'm going to make my curl using something thicker. And then I can add it right on top of my other one. Remember, my goal is to make sure that my hat looks as goofy as possible. And the way that you do that is by making sure, again, that you're really filling things up. I can even glue things or tape and staple them in different ways so that they sit the way that I want them to sit. So right now I'm noticing that I would really like if this curl sat on top of the other curl. So I'm going to staple it so that it stays the way that it is right now. You could also glue or tape it that way. So I'm going to continue to add things to my hat off camera, and I'll come back when I'm finished adding all of the different parts and show you what it looks like finished.